Welcome to Take 5 Action, brought to you by the Forest City Film Festival. My name is Matthew Downs, and this is a podcast about some people who inspire me and the movies that inspire them. As a young filmmaker, movies have made their mark on my life. And I believe that our favorite films can inspire us to dream bigger and even change the way that we look at the world. When I look up to industry professionals, I wonder what movies have inspired them to the heights that they've reached. So join me in conversation with creatives as we discuss the 5 movies that define their careers. This is Scene 1, Take 2. Action. For today's guest, I want to welcome Astrid Van Wieren. Now, I was first introduced to Astrid's work through Come From Away, as I'm sure many people were, on Broadway. But Astrid's actually done so much more before that, including becoming and establishing herself as a giant within the world of Toronto theater. She also co-wrote, co-produced, and starred in the independent drama The River You Step In, which played at the Forest City Film Festival in this past year, 2020. It's a lovely little film. And Astrid's also just a very kind person. I met Astrid before this at the stage door of Come From Away, and she spoke to me for a very long time, which made an impact on me, and definitely was. Aren't all Broadway actors just the nicest people in the world, Astrid? Because it's the impression that I always get.
Well, I have to say that my experience, I was very nervous to become part of that community. And I just thought, well, Astrid, just be yourself. And, you know, it's going to be fine. And I've been so welcomed. And I hope to continue that tradition by being welcoming to anybody who comes to see theater or gets to be lucky enough to go and do theater on Broadway. I've sometimes, I've been in a coffee shop and I'll notice somebody has a little piece of tape on, residue on the back of their neck. And I'll say, oh, are you in the theater? Or, it's a great way to meet people.
That's fantastic.
Look for the tape.
Now, I'm a huge fan of Come From Away, obviously, but this is a movie podcast, and you have worked in the films as well, right? You co-produced, co-wrote The River You Step In. So we're going to be talking about movies today, and that's going to be the focus. As much as I know we'd both love to talk about theater and talk about drama, this is a movie podcast. So
Excellent.
I do have a question. Coming to movies and coming to your busy schedule with Come From Away, which obviously at the moment, due to COVID, is not running. However, your schedule, you play 8 shows a week. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Do you ever have time to go to a movie theater and sit down and watch a movie?
Yes.
You do?
I make time.
You make,
yes,
okay.
I do.
Okay. Yeah. So, do you have any, because you'd obviously be in New York when you're watching movies. Do you have any stories of movie theaters in New York? Because New York is obviously the craziest city in the world. Do you have any crazy New York movie theater stories?
There's some great, now my mind's going to go blank and I'm not going to remember the names of any of them, but I love going to a movie theater and going a little bit early and sitting in the lobby and watching all the people come in who come to see indie films and stuff. They're so, there's just for every type, every walk of life. And I just love it. Everybody has their little routines and you can see people, get their little espresso or their popcorn. I try to never sit near somebody who's eating popcorn, by the way, even though I love it myself. Sometimes there's nothing worse than,
do you have a movie
I love
snack?
Being around people. Do I have a movie snack? I used to like to get Glossettes, raisins, or peanuts and put them in the popcorn, the hot popcorn, and let the chocolate and the salt all kind of mash together. Yeah.
Delicious.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, very good.
That's fantastic. Well, we're going to get right into the show. So before we begin, I'll just talk about the concept a little bit. So this is an interview, but it's not really an interview. We're going to be talking about Astrid's life through the movies that she loves. Specifically, I've given Astrid 5 categories, and Astrid has given me back 5 films that correspond to each of those categories. Each of these categories is going to talk about a different stage of Astrid's career and life, and we're going to talk about a life through the movies. I've watched all the movies. We're here to talk about them, so let's hop into it.
So after you got the list, you went and watched all the different movies?
I did.
Oh, okay.
So I had seen most of them before, but there was a few that I hadn't seen. So that's actually the most fun part of this show, because for me, there comes a point where you're thinking, have I seen all that there is to see? Have I seen everything that can inspire me? And the answer is no. You've never seen everything that
So
can
many
inspire you.
movies.
There's so much.
Yeah.
And so it's fun because, I have my viewing patterns, and it's really fun to get to watch things that I might not have gotten around to without you recommending them. So a few of
I
these.
purposefully didn't go back and watch some of them because to me, part of watching films and movies is the time that you saw them, the things that were
Mm,
around. Because the thing I find really exciting, and before we get into movies, I was just thinking about this, i- is how influenced we are by the state we are in our lives and how we respond to a film. And a film can actually, even though people say it's set in stone, it changes because of how we respond to it.
it's true.
And the only example I'll give about that is I remember seeing Magnolia for the first time.
Oh, I love
And
Magnolia.
I know, but the first time I saw it, I hated it.
Oh, really?
Something
Oh,
in me, the
man.
mood I was in or whatever else, I thought it was the most pretentious, horrible, like everybody in it was just blah. And then it came up again. Somebody had rented it in our household or something when you could still rent movies and pop them in a VCR, DVD thing, whatever. And I watched it and I thought, well, I'll give it a chance. And I loved it. So it's
Mm.
interesting to me that we, as like we're having a dialogue today, you have a dialogue with the movie you're watching and you remember movies sometimes differently than they even were. Like, I just find that really
It's true. And
fascinating
they
as we,
impact you so much in different times. Yeah, I have a list, probably 100 movies long, of movies that I watched for the first time and went, yeah, that was good, and then watched it again and I went, this is the best thing ever. So it is always
have you
fun
ever
to.
watched a movie and remembered the ending differently than it actually was?
Yes, all the time.
Isn't that the strangest thing?
Mm-hmm.
It's the strangest thing. I remember watching a movie called Butterflies Are Free. And I think partly it was because it was on TV. And I think maybe I was quite young. I didn't see the ending, the proper ending. So I thought it ended very sadly. And that Goldie Hawn left this poor young blind man and
Mm.
that their relationship was doomed. And then I saw it again and she comes back. And I was like, did I just not see the ending? So the whole movie changed. Anyways, I just find that
That's hilarious.
fascinating. As we get into things, I might even misrepresent some of these films because I might misremember them a bit.
And that's okay. This is about the way that you've seen the films, and we want to talk about that. But this actually gives me a perfect transition into our first movie, because I actually feel this way about the movie that we're about to talk about. So the first
Okay.
movie we're going to talk about comes from a category called inspiration. So this is a movie that came to Astrid at a time that sparked her interest in performing arts and in film and in just the magic of acting and film and storytelling. So the movie that you chose was Mary Poppins, which I'll start with because this is one
Yes.
that I misremember because I was in a high school production of the Cameron Mackintosh stage version, and so going back and watching it, I just kept thinking, I don't remember this part. This wasn't in what I did. I haven't seen this in so long that it I remembered it very differently than it was. But it's a beautiful film. So what is it that drew you to Mary Poppins?
Well, one thing is when one thing I did go back and look when it was made, and it was made, I think, in '69, which would have been too young to remember that. So I actually saw it when it was re-released in 1973.
Mm.
Uh, and there's a couple things I remember about the movie. One was just the animated sequence with the dancing penguins, I think it was. See,
Yeah,
I might be
Jolly
misremembering.
Holiday and Super.
Jolly
Yeah.
Holiday and Dick Van Dyke's. I realize now it was a horrible accent, supposedly a horrible Cockney accent, but I just thought he was delightful. And I remember just thinking, I wish he was my dad. Although I loved my dad, I just remember thinking, I wish he was my dad. I wish my dad was a chimney sweep. But I love the singing and it just transported me. And I got to see it twice. That's the thing I remember
Mm.
more than anything is that there was a family on the street whose name was also Van Wieren, but spelled differently. And they were going to see Mary Poppins again. And they invited me along. And the idea that you could see a movie twice, for some reason, it had never occurred to me. I don't know how old I was 70, so 73, I was 65. So I was like 8 years old or whatever. But the idea that you could see a movie twice, like that concept to me, we're actually going to go see it again. We're going to spend money and go see it again. And I was so excited to see it again and loved it probably even more and realized that you could do something over and over again. Like, I guess the idea of being in plays and musicals and doing something over and over again and that it's always delightful and you don't get bored of something if you love it,
Yeah, and the
I guess.
magic is just recaptured, right?
Recaptured every time. Yeah. And
Well,
Julie Andrews, just so delightful.
and there's
So
nothing
good.
more magical than Mary Poppins, right?
Yeah.
It's just so when I was rewatching it, the moment that stood out to me was it's the first moment you see Julie Andrews floating in, and she's just a dot in the distance, and everything
Yeah.
around her is this beautiful blue matte painting
Yeah.
of the city
Yeah.
of London, and she's just floating in, and it's just a moment where it's so magical, right?
Yeah.
And you just see, you suspend all disbelief, everything goes out the window, and you just see this woman floating in out of a painting.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Incredible.
And then to find out that the woman who wrote it was not really in love with,
Yeah.
she didn't want they weren't allowed to have the color red in the movie
Hmm.
or something because she had all these different strange stipulations because ultimately she didn't really want
No,
her
she
book to
wanted Walt
become a film.
Disney. She didn't want her book to become a musical, is what it was.
Right.
She
Yeah.
wanted Walt Disney to stay out of it, and she didn't like Disney. She didn't like what he did with his movies. She didn't like how
Yeah.
he turned good fairy tales into movie musicals, and she wanted no part of that. But it's a beautiful
Right.
film, despite the
It
fact
is it
that
is
she.
beautiful. I think she probably just would have just liked it a little bit darker,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, like the Lemony Snicket kind of route, like just a bit more edge. I think she probably had a lot of edge as a woman. I hope
Oh yeah.
secretly she loved it. I'm kind of hoping that secretly she may have been cranky and that deep down she kind of loved it.
Which, yeah, I feel like someone like that would end up liking the film, but not for the reasons that they like what they wrote. She
Yes,
would probably
exactly.
be along the lines of, well, it was good, but it wasn't mine. Um, but
I can respect that. I can
yeah,
understand
I
that.
can
Yeah.
absolutely respect that as well. Have you seen the sequel that came out recently?
No. Is that
Okay,
the one with Emily Blunt
Emily
and
Blunt.
Lin-Manuel
I wanted to
Miranda?
hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on it because I do actually very much like it.
Okay, on your recommendation, I will check it out.
It's
I will
not
check it out.
it's not the original. It's very different in the sense that, because I think part of the magic of the original Mary Poppins as well is that it doesn't have much of a story. It's more of like a collection of vignettes of them going around the city and just
Yeah.
exploring and adventuring and imagining. And this one has much more of a conflict, much more of a story. It's like it's a modern Hollywood musical.
Right.
But
And I
it's
love the two performers, so I really should check it. I love Emily Blunt.
oh, and
Anything she does, I think she's delightful. And Lin-Manuel Miranda, I mean, Hamilton, everything that he's
oh yeah,
accomplished and
he
in
does a great
Heights,
job.
all of it.
Yeah,
Okay, good,
he
good,
does
good.
do
I'm
a very good
excited.
job. So I would recommend checking it out. But don't expect it to be the 1964 Disney movie. It's not that, but
And that's okay. It's okay. It's
it's
okay
fun.
when something's not. Yeah, okay. I'll check it out for sure.
Okay. So the next movie we're going to talk about corresponds to a theme of exploration. And exploration meaning you've discovered your love of theater, of performing arts, you've discovered this, and now you're exploring a little bit more. And we're going to talk about a few of the movies that you found, actually, but specifically one. So the movies that you gave me there were the Triple F, Fame,
The triple F's,
Flashdance,
yeah.
and Footloose. Specifically, we're going to
Yes.
be talking about Fame, but I think that it was really interesting that you gave all three of these because they do go together really well.
And they're all around the same time. I think they're 80, 84, 85, or
Yeah,
88, 89. I can't
Fame
remember.
was 1980, Alan Parker. Then I think Flashdance was 83. Can't remember the director that did that. And I also can't remember the director that did Footloose, but that was 84. So they all did kind of come out in
Right.
succession.
Yeah.
But
And they
yeah,
all eventually became stage musicals.
they did. Yeah, they all became stage musicals. And what I noticed that was interesting about them when I watched all three of them, I hadn't seen any of them as movies, but I'd seen them as plays. And so I expected a lot more singing and dancing out of like Footloose, and like I expected
Right.
numbers, but they're dance movies, really, at the
They
core.
really are. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
More than anything.
They're yes,
Hmm.
they absolutely are. But they all have at the heart, somebody wanting to make it,
Yeah.
like or break it in a way. Because Footloose, it's about breaking conventions and letting people dance
Oh yeah.
and Flashdance is she wants to be a dancer. She
She's
wants
breaking
to,
conventions.
breaking conventions and what is a ballet dancer supposed to look like or
Hmm.
be like, and she really wants to dance. And then of course my favorite is Fame,
Yeah.
which
My favorite of the
became,
three as well.
a TV series as well that I remember watching, and that whole expression of fame costs, and
Yeah.
right here is where you start paying, and the idea of going to theater school,
Mm,
that's what that said to me, that it could happen, like that people go, like that this is a career you can have. This idea of actually being able to, that it wasn't just something that magical people did, that
yeah.
it's something that an ordinary girl from London could pursue,
Did you
So that's
So, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I'll just briefly talk about the plot of Fame. So, Fame is it's 1980 musical. It's set in a New York performing arts high school, based on a real school, and it's about a group of students, each bringing their own talent to the school, each with their own hopes and dreams. And it's really just this ensemble film about all of these different kids trying to find their footing, trying to find their place, trying to find what makes them unique, and trying to make it, and eventually, hopefully, be famous.
yeah.
So that's basically what Fame is about. Uh, so it is about a performing arts high school, but did you see this when you were in college? Did you see this beforehand?
Before college, yeah. I'm trying to remember. It might have been right at sort of in high school when I saw it.
Okay.
Pretty sure that's when I saw it. And I didn't go to theater school right away. I went to the University of Western Ontario in London,
Hmm.
studied English and French literature. Whole story behind that, why I did that. But and then did The King and I, and just that idea of like, and it's not, the funny thing is that it's called Fame. The movie's called Fame, but I
Hmm.
think most actors would agree that that's not why you're doing it. You're not
No.
doing it to become famous. So the title's a bit of a misnomer, because really all those people are just looking for a way to express and tell stories and create community. I mean, that's the thing that I remember about the film too. I thought, oh, you can find your people, or as the kids, I think the kids still say, or we used to say as kids, you want to find your tribe.
Yeah.
You want to know, you want to be in a chosen family where everybody understands that you're a little odd or a little different. And I think everybody actually is, but artists just have the bravery to step up and be themselves. And that's what that film was for me. It was like, you can do this. You can be with a group of people who will want to sing and dance and tell stories and be dramatic and emotional and all of
At
those
times,
lovely
very
things.
dramatic, right?
Sometimes very, very dramatic. Yes, yes.
Hmm. So did Fame kind of help influence your choice to go to theater school, or was it in the back of your mind then? Because
Absolutely. And it also introduced to me the idea of New York. This, I'm trying to
mm,
remember. I think I saw it before. I think it was a grade 12 or 13 choir trip. Remember, there used to be grade 13. That's how old I am, in Ontario, anyways. And we went on a choir trip to New York, and that's when I got to see my first play in New York. And I think everybody feels this way when they go to New York. And this is
mhm,
what Fame, also the movie, said to me. It's a place where you belong if you're an artist. But I think everybody feels at home as soon as they get there. The energy of the city, which I think it's Alan Parker, right? Is he the
Alan
director
Parker's
of
the
Fame?
director, yeah.
He really captured that, when the kids go out on the street and they're dancing on the
Oh,
cars. And it's
yeah.
like you see that and you go, oh, come on. But once you get to New York, you're like, I could see that happening. This place has endless possibility and potential. And I think, I had it always in the back of my mind. Someday I have to go to New York. Someday I have to, work there, even in a small capacity, like off Broadway, something,
Yeah, so far off Broadway that you're in New Jersey, right?
Yes, exactly. Hoboken,
Yeah.
Hoboken.
Fame does make New York City magical. It
Yep.
really, even though I was surprised at how grounded the movie was, because like I said, I'd seen it as a stage show. I'd never seen it as a movie.
It's dirty.
It's
I mean, it's New York, it's not like a
yeah.
sanitized version of it. It's scary. It's dirty.
No,
I mean, what happens to Kara's character at the end when that horrible
mhm.
person says, take off your top. The vulnerability. I mean, just all of it. I, that's how I'm remembering it. Anyways, I
Yeah.
didn't rewatch it, so
No,
I'm
it's
thinking I'll
true.
go back and see it.
It's when I saw it, I was thinking this is not like, even though it does make New York magical, it makes it grimy at the same time, and
Hmm.
it's very much like a Scorsese New York to me, as a movie reference. Like, it feels like the New York out of Taxi Driver, which is the same time frame. That was 76. This was 1980. So New
Hmm.
York was like kind of a gross place, but at the same, it's the city of dreams. It's the city where anyone can fit in.
Yeah.
Um, this is also an aside, but you said that you went on a field trip to New York in grade 12
with
with
Medway High
choir.
School. Yeah.
Was the director Ken Fleet?
Yes.
I know
Yes.
him. Yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah. Sweet man. Sweet, sweet man.
Yeah,
Um,
he was great. Our whole music department was great. There was a great theater school teacher there too, but we didn't really have a lot of theater per se, but there was choir, and the choir was excellent, led by Ken Fleet. And yeah, it was just, we did a lot of numbers. So I
mhm.
learned a lot of musical numbers out of context of shows because we would sing them. And then
Yeah.
later on you're finding out what they were about when you're a high school kid and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we sang those songs.
Well, I'll let you know, Medway is still known for its choir. But
Fantastic.
yeah, it's really interesting that your love of performing arts was sparked in that way, out of the context, outside of the context of the shows, and outside of the context of what that's coming from. But
Yeah.
if you were at the Fame High School, this is actually an interesting question. If you were at the Fame High School, there's all the different groups, there's all the different streams. Which one do you think you
Yeah.
would have fit into? Would you have been a drama person? Would you have
I would
been
have
a
been, I think, was it Doris? Was it Doris? I would have been especially when I was younger, it would have all been about the drama. It
mm,
would have all been about Shakespeare and, Tennessee Williams
yeah?
and Streetcar Named Desire and all. It would have been that route.
You would have been in
But
the
I would have
group
definitely
that's
had my
like
ear
lying on
to
the
the
floor.
music.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. I went to Ryerson and we did all of that crazy,
Oh yeah, the
emotional
the sort of
stuff.
pseudo acting. We're just gonna like lie down and think thoughts, and
Yes,
it's
yes.
fun. It's fun.
Run around and be a tree.
Yeah, run around, be a tree.
I
Act as
remember
an
once
animal.
one of our acting teachers said something like do it and blow or something. I don't know, just
Mhm.
just crazy things that you just look back on now and you just think, whoa, good times.
Yeah, yeah. So for our next film, the category that I gave Astrid is motivation. And this is a film that pushed Astrid to kind of go above and beyond and break it, right? We were talking about with Fame breaking it. And
Yeah,
not just breaking in, but making your mark and getting to that place, getting to the place you want to be at. So you gave me a bunch of films here, but the one that we chose to talk about is The Devil and Miss Jones. All of the films that you gave me were old Hollywood films, and actually, I
yeah,
don't think you gave films, more so you gave directors and stars, and this
yeah.
was the film that you gave. So
Did you watch
I
it?
I did. I had
What'd you
I'd
think? Were
never heard of
those
this film.
characters? Are those characters amazing? Just
They're
amazing.
so yeah, no. So I'd never heard of the movie before. And that's actually what I was looking, because some of the other films, even the ones that I hadn't seen before, like I hadn't seen Fame before, but I knew of it and I knew what it was about and I knew what I was getting into. But I literally never heard of this. So thank you for that, because
Oh,
that's
you're welcome.
that's something that I didn't expect. I expected to at least know the movies that we were going to be talking about, but I didn't know this one. Um, so for anyone that hasn't seen it, as I expect most haven't, because again, I hadn't seen it,
And
and
just make sure they see The Devil and Miss Jones, not The Devil in Miss Jones, which
yes,
is,
that's the
yes,
1976 movie. But so
pornography kind
yeah,
of film. So don't go there.
don't go
That's not
there.
the one I meant.
No, this is 1941, The Devil and Miss Jones. It's
Yes.
directed by Sam Wood. It's an RKO film, and it's the story of the world's richest man, who he owns a department store. Is it in Pittsburgh, or
I,
is it New York, Pittsburgh?
Chicago, maybe, I can't remember,
Chicago.
but it's a big city. It's a big
It's a
city.
big city.
Yeah.
I'm actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure if they ever mention what city it is. Actually, I think it might be New York, because they go to the boardwalk. Um,
I think it is New
I
York,
think
and I
it's New
didn't
York.
rewatch it. But yeah,
Yeah. So it's
yeah,
about the world's richest man. He owns a department store. All the workers in the department store are striking and they're protesting and they're burning figures of him, but no one knows what this guy looks like because he's very secretive. So he decides to full on undercover boss style go in, get a job in the department store so that he can root out the strikers, and he can
yes,
destroy
yeah.
the labor
Who are the
movement.
leaders of this
Yeah.
union movement?
Um,
Yes.
and he gradually learns to be sympathetic to their cause. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, before we start, I was really shocked to see an old Hollywood movie that was so left leaning. Because normally you see these films and they're glamorizing the American dream, and they're talking about like um they really idolized the upper class, but in this, it was very much not that at all. It
And
was
they're actually, if you start digging away, sort of like if you crack that vein of if you're mining for these kind of
yeah.
films, there's tons of them. There's a lot of very comic films that they skewer politics, and you watch them and you think like, I just rewatched Meet John Doe the other day.
I haven't heard of that one either. I'm going to put it on my
Yes, with
list. It's going on my
Gary
list.
Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck, and it's all about politics and a guy who's trying to use what was initially a good idea and use it towards his political gain.
Hmm.
And it's about people becoming cynical, or I mean, ultimately it's like, oh, the Americans, they do the right thing kind of thing
Hmm.
in the movie. But there's actually Barbara Stanwyck, and the reason I love these movies, it's the women in them, that the characters, Rosalind Russell, Jean Arthur, Barbara Stanwyck, these incredibly strong, well-dressed women who, almost also along that line, the sort of the film noir, the women who like
Yeah.
the trash talk, and they don't take any guff from anybody,
Yeah,
those
like
kind of
Katharine Hepburn,
Katharine
Transatlantic,
Hepburn,
like
yeah, Joan Crawford, all of those, sometimes very tragic things, but also these, I used to walk around saying, and it's not even a line from a film, but just it became sort of a mantra. My agent and I always laugh. I always say, "What are they offering?" And she once said, "You'll be lucky if you get bus fare." And so I was like, that sounds so much like a 1940s thing. It's like, you'll be lucky if you get bus fare. Bus fare,
yeah,
that's how you're lucky.
you just picture like Katharine Hepburn in a trench coat and a fedora. Say,
Yeah,
yeah, you'll be lucky if you get bus fare.
bus fare, that's how
Bus
you're lucky.
fare.
But exactly. And so those women, I found those women very inspiring. And it's interesting because I think actually sometimes there were better roles written for women in the 40s, strong, independent women going through stuff, but like making these incredible choices to like do heroic things. And then, we got into movies for a long time where women were always they were either, the virtuous, virginal character, or, the slutty, there was nothing in between. Or, if like, for example, now I'm thinking about it, I'm a woman of a certain age, and like, am I supposed to just be, the grandmother, which is why we did, the River You Step In. It's like, this is a fully realized character, a woman who's going through stuff, who's still, you know, sexual, who's still like vibrant, who's still thinking. It's like you're not over 50 and suddenly you're only the grandmother. You know what I
And
mean?
that's
So
another interesting point about the Devil and Miss Jones is not only is Miss Jones, young, beautiful, but you have an older woman in a major role as well. And not only
yeah.
that, you have her as the love interest of the film. They don't fall into the classic trap that a lot of films even nowadays fall into, where you have an older man going for a younger woman,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because
Instead,
you could see what he didn't. Now, if they made that movie, maybe The Richest Man in the World, who's an older gentleman for people who
mhm,
don't know the film, you could see him maybe hooking up with Jean Arthur's character,
yeah, yes.
and it's like what,
And
like
that's
Harrison Ford and like maybe like Jennifer Lawrence, and you're like
in my
what?
mind, that's what I was expecting, right?
Yeah,
That's going into
and he
it.
falls in love with a woman of his
Yeah,
own age, and
but
it's delightful.
exactly, and it's so fun. I also here's something that I realized in the film as well when it started. I am a major. I mean, I feel like it goes without saying that like I'm a major Citizen Kane fan.
Hmm.
Like big Citizen Kane fan. So I chuckled at the beginning of the film when there's such a clear Citizen Kane reference because the movie starts with a notice that says, "Dear richest men in the world, this movie is not about any of you in specific. Please don't sue us." And Citizen Kane was also made by the same production company. RKO made both The Devil and Miss Jones and Citizen Kane,
I
both in
forgot that.
1941 at the same time. So they were coming out at the same time. And RKO was going through lawsuits because Citizen
Because of
Kane
Hearst, yeah.
was also, yeah, was skewering William Randolph Hearst, who was one
Mm.
of the richest men in the world. And now here's another movie that RKO is also making, which is also making fun of rich people, and they were like, "Hey, please don't sue us. Please don't sue
I
us."
think that was probably a wink and a nod from them, because so obviously it's not a Citizen
Yeah,
Kane
it's
reference. It's
so
not a Hearst. It's
no,
such a different kind
it
of
is such a different, but
thing.
it's funny that they put that reference in
Absolutely.
there.
Did you see Mank? Did you watch Mank?
I did. I was gonna bring up,
Interesting. We'll talk
yeah,
about that
I
sometime. Yeah.
it's I liked Mank. I don't know
Yeah.
about
I
you, but
found it a little uneven, but ultimately it was
mhm.
worth it for just even that one scene when he crashes that dinner.
Oh
and
yeah.
has his, Gary Oldman, watching him do that big speech
Well,
around that
and
table,
Amanda
and oh,
Seyfried definitely
so
captures.
beautiful.
She captures what women like Jean Arthur had, and what like Barbara Stanwyck and Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah.
She captures that, you grace of the old timey movie star.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And always being underestimated, and always
Hmm.
sliding in and reminding you, my intelligence is matching yours,
Yeah.
sir.
Hmm.
So treat me with respect. Yeah.
The other thing that I was noticing in The Devil and Miss Jones and other old Hollywood films in general, there's such a theatricality to them. And
Oh
do
yes.
you think
Yeah. Not
that?
not the most subtle acting
Oh yeah,
sometimes,
but
but
do you think that inspired you at all? Because there is, like, the style of acting there is so similar to the world of theater.
yeah, I think because it's sort of a young time for filmmaking and stuff like that. At that time, people were still sort of finding their feet, and because really, telling stories is telling stories. So it doesn't matter whether you're on stage or a camera's in your face, but there is knowing that this is right here
Hmm.
is so different than knowing you have to hit the back of the house with your voice. Although we have
Hmm.
so much assistance nowadays with sound equipment and stuff, but yeah, there's something delightful. They color outside the lines. I mean, they just go big, and it's so fun.
It
And
is.
I have taught some acting, and I'm not a fan of the whole mumblecore sort of, you know, you barely move your mouth, and I think that when the sound is off and you're watching something, you should still understand what's going
Hmm.
on. And if somebody is just doing this and that, I'm like, I don't understand the story. I should be able to turn the sound off and know what's happening in your heart and what's going, like, I may not know exactly, but I want to know. I want to be engaged. So that's sort of where I live.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of there's the scene in Fame where one of the main characters is doing a monologue, and he's kind of talking like, oh, I just like he's mumbling, and the teacher goes, "Speak up. You need to use your diction." And he goes, um, "I can mumble." Brando mumbled. Brando, he's one of the greatest actors of all time. He mumbled. I can mumble.
It's funny. I actually got to talk with Uta Hagen, who did Streetcar Named Desire for a while with Marlon
Mm,
Brando, and I remember
she's a
I got
legend.
to ask. Yeah, yeah, I got to ask her about it, and she was not a huge fan. She was not a huge fan of Marlon Brando on stage. I mean, yeah, he's almost untouchable on screen for some of the amazing things he did. But can you imagine trying to understand him and you're like in
I
the fourth row? It's like,
would
what? What'd you say?
rather die than see Marlon Brando in theater. Honestly, could. I would probably be. If he went up there and did uh, his streetcar, the way that he did it in the movie, beautiful in the movie, breathtaking in the movie, like revolutionized acting in the movie. On stage, you wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
understand a damn word he said.
Yeah, it would have been, it would be interesting. So yeah, that's a great. See, I'd forgot about that. See, I have to rewatch Fame. There's so many great moments, like when the guy goes in to dance with his girlfriend and ends up getting into school and she doesn't. It's just like
I
the
I was.
artist will out. He pretends he doesn't want it, but he wants it so
Oh
badly.
yeah.
It's obvious.
I was blown away in that scene as well by how inappropriate the dancing was. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
these are supposed to be high schoolers. This is oh my god."
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Now, back to old Hollywood. One thing that I want to talk about as well, because we've talked about The Devil and Miss Jones, lovely film, but you
yeah.
mentioned that you are a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock as well.
Yes, I do love Alfred Hitchcock. I would say though I'm a bigger fan of Preston Sturges, but
Oh,
definitely, yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. But I mean, there's no denying his storytelling. I mean, he could scare us in a way. I think it's so easy to like just knife in and murder and blood, but he had a way of telling stories that was more getting into your head, the psychology of it, and even Psycho. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's not that gory. So why
No,
is it so scary? Because
it's
it's
the
the
suspense.
anticipation, it's the suspense. So you told me you're going to ask me my favorite. It's so hard. I really like the 39 Steps, which is one of the first
That's one that I
first
haven't
ones
seen.
that he did. Well,
Hmm.
I recommend seeing it.
I hear
It's
it's a
a
lot
it's a
of fun.
very it's a very fun. I haven't watched it in a long time,
Hmm.
but definitely I remember being struck by that. And I love Cary Grant in North by Northwest, which I rewatched not too long ago.
My grandfather was an
Um,
extra in that movie. That's a fun fact. Yeah,
that is a fun
yeah,
fact.
I've never been able to spot him in it, but he is in one of the first sequences of the film.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I'm trying
he's
to, yeah.
background in it, but it's you can spot him.
Probably maybe in the
Mhm.
club or something. When
Um,
they get is doesn't he gets because he gets somebody thinks he's somebody else because he takes a call at the same
yeah,
time that they think it's somebody else and
I'm not positive, but I think it's in one of the scenes near the beginning. There's crowds moving in and out of I can't remember what the building is, but it's in New York, and there's crowds moving in and out of the building, and he's one of the
so cool.
uh, he's part of the crowd, but you can see him in it. As
Oh,
far
right,
as
when
I've
he's
heard,
okay.
as far as I've this is what my mother told me. So again, I really have I've
Oh, you
personally
didn't
not
have a
spotted
get
him.
to have a chance to ask him about it.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't at the
Ah,
time.
that's too bad because it would have been fun to learn about
hmm
what it would have been like on the set
Yeah,
back
even in
then.
just like a background role. But yeah, I have to admit my favorite Hitchcock movie is Rear Window.
Oh, that's a great
So
choice.
good. Rear
Yeah.
Window's
Oh, well,
amazing.
Jimmy Stewart. I mean, he's one of those actors like because you were talking about acting style in the older movies and how it's quite large. We can call their
hmm
acting quite large. Uh, Jimmy was very good at being large in a small container,
Yeah,
like a lot happening here.
yeah,
Because I mean, think about Rear Window. He's stuck in a chair. I mean, he's can't use most of his body as an actor to kind of like bring in the breath and what he's doing. But what he does and all the close-ups and Grace Kelly is so beautiful in that too. And it's yeah, that's a creepy, wonderfully creepy film. So good.
Well, and Jimmy
So good.
Stewart's so fun to watch. He's like the Tom Hanks of the 50s, really.
It's a great analogy. Absolutely. Great. And yeah, definitely. And Vertigo is so good too.
Oh, Vertigo's
Who is the
fantastic.
actress in that?
Kim Novak.
Kim
Yeah,
Novak. Just yeah.
one of my favorites as well. Well, we could
I
talk
have to
about
confess
Hitchcock
though,
forever.
I don't completely understand Vertigo. I mean, I've watched it a few times and I still
Really?
don't completely the plot. Sometimes I'm like, I get it, but it's so
It's
creepy.
very
It's so
twisty.
weird.
It's very
It's very
twisty, very
twisty. It's very
turny.
twisty.
But yeah, very interesting. Also, mentioning Citizen Kane, in 2012, I believe, because Citizen Kane had reigned as like the greatest movie of all time for 60 years since like the 50s.
Mhm.
Every critic had said like, "Oh, this is the best movie of all time." And then in 2012, there was the poll that had crowned Citizen Kane. Then shifted, and Vertigo was named the best movie of all time.
I didn't know that. That's
hmm
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and that's like the poll. It's the Sight and Sound poll of all of that. But anyways, we started this by talking about the Devil and Miss Jones,
Yes.
Devil and not Devil in, the
Yes.
Devil and Miss Jones, and yeah, like I was super happy to check it out, and
Oh,
I
I'm
hope
so
that
glad. I'm so
I
glad.
hope that others will check it out too after hearing this recommendation because it's so funny and it's so just surprisingly modern in its politics. Really cool.
Absolutely. And really watch Meet John Doe and a whole bunch of other of those of that ilk. And you it's a lot about politics and
Mhm.
about the common man and getting together and that capitalism doesn't always, the trickle down economy doesn't exactly exist.
I'm
And they knew
gonna
that back then already.
I'm gonna check that out, and I'll send you an email when I watch it because I
Yes, please.
yeah, okay, perfect. So the next category that we're going to be talking about is desperation. So this is a film that came to Astrid, or a group of films, because Astrid did supply me with about 20 films here. Thank you for that.
Well, once you've reached my age, it's hard to narrow things down. And even afterwards, I kept thinking, oh, I should have said that. I should have. And then I thought,
Mhm.
well, you can talk about almost any film, and it can have resonance.
And so, desperation as a category is meaning to talk about a point in your career when you were kind of questioning, is this worth continuing?
Mm.
Am I really meant for this? And what's the film that kind of inspired you to keep going? Now, you did give me a huge list, and it was very tough for me because that list contained a lot of my favorite films. So I'm just going to name
Oh,
drop a
cool.
few of them because
Yes,
you
please.
mentioned the Decalogue, which I think is fantastic, and I'd love to talk about that
Yeah.
forever. You also mentioned the Three Colors trilogy, which I'd love to talk about that. Do the Right
It's so sad
Thing.
that he's gone because
Oh yeah,
he had more movies to make.
he absolutely, and he died what, mid 90s, and like he had so much more to offer than what he got to make
But
with
we're so lucky we
Decalogue.
have
And
the films that he did.
yeah, they're incredible. So that's, to reiterate, Decalogue, Three Colors trilogy, which is three colors: red, white, and blue. Check those out; they're all beautiful. You also mentioned Do the Right Thing, which I'm heartbroken that we're not going to be talking about, because that's literally
Spike
my
Lee,
third favorite movie
there's a
ever.
voice, there's an authentic, real voice who like matches form, content,
Oh
all
yeah,
of it, and brings humor, and at the same time, like you almost like you're about to laugh and you almost choke. It chokes in your throat.
yeah.
Like it just, yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Oh, Do the Right Thing, incredible. But the film we're going to be talking about, the film that I narrowed your list down to because I saw some similarities that I wanted to discuss, is Passionfish, which is a 1992 film directed by John Sayles. And John Sayles, for those that don't know, is like an indie film maverick. Since the 70s, he's just been working outside the Hollywood system and making quality films that got him noticed by mainstream cinema. And so he was working outside the Hollywood system, but making films that really resonated, uh, and are really really powerful. So we are going to be talking about Passionfish, which is the story of. She's a former soap opera star. It's Mary McDonnell. She plays former soap opera star who got in an accident and is now paralyzed from the waist down. And as is often the tragic case, can no longer act, as she's in a wheelchair. And so it's her story as
Well, and the thing
she's.
is, I mean, the thing about that, she could have, because I'm just thinking about Ali Stoker and people who,
I was going to mention Ali Stoker
yeah,
because, you know,
because it's more, it's not even that she's not just paralyzed from her legs down. She becomes paralyzed because she
yeah,
sees her worth only as being fully abled, which is part of the heartbreak of the movie, because she can't embrace her new reality, or she eventually kind of does. But yeah, I just wanted to say
yeah,
that
and
because
that's actually something I did want to talk about because the tragedy in that is that so often actors do lose their careers when uh, events like this happen. But it doesn't have to be that way, and we're seeing. And because you're on
exactly.
Broadway, I did want to mention that there's that shift that has happened towards having differently abled actors, and
Absolutely.
Ali Stoker is an amazing. She won the Tony, correct? Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
for Oklahoma, and she was also in, I believe she was in Spring Awakening. Every time I've seen her do
she's
anything,
incredible.
she's just, yeah, and it's not just about what she's just a great actor,
Yeah,
and she's
and
got a great voice.
that's
Yeah,
absolutely what I mean. She's
yeah, yeah.
amazing. But I mean, the tragic thing that I've heard is that when she performed at Oklahoma, not at Oklahoma, sorry, at the Tony Awards, the stage wasn't accessible. Wasn't
Yeah.
wheelchair accessible.
Yeah, we every we like to say, the liberal arts, and that we're really in tune with things, but we have so much work to do in not just
Hmm.
accessibility, but representation, and
Yeah,
not just on stages but behind. I mean, all of that work needs to be done. But going back to
back to
Passion Fish,
Passionfish.
which, and why it struck me so much, is because I had that mindset, like, what if something happened to my voice, or
Yeah,
what if something happened to me? Would I still be able to move forward? And the movie has so much gentle humor and kindness and humanity. Alfre Woodard is so
oh,
beautiful. She
she's
plays
amazing.
the nurse that finally is the only person who, because of her circumstances, that is willing to put up with this diva attitude that
Yeah.
this
Well,
character
because like you
has.
said, she's not just paralyzed from the waist down; she's paralyzed in her mind.
Yeah, in
Um,
her heart, she's
yeah,
frozen. And how other people treat her, and I mean, it's just, there's some really great moments in that film, and he takes his time. I mean, a John Sayles film is not a music video.
no,
It doesn't cut quickly from one thing to the other. It leaves
it
its
lingers
actors
on the
time.
moments.
Yeah. And David Strathairn,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Which he's
he
also
plays.
he's amazing. And have you seen Nomadland yet?
No, I haven't seen it actually.
Oh
I
my
haven't seen it
goodness,
yet.
he's incredible in it. So, but
I
yeah,
got to see him on stage once. uh, in a production. I can't remember what it was in New York. A wonderful, wonderful actor.
Hmm.
But and also I think that there's a lovely sense of place that John Sayles creates
Yeah.
because I mean, it's in the bayou and you meet these characters and you get a whole sense of a different culture and sort of the Cajun culture and stuff. And it's just it's really it's a passion fish out of water. Like she's going back to where she came
Yeah.
from to kind of be reborn. And Alfred Woodard's character is coming from a completely different, like she's like what is this world? And
Yeah.
she's healing as well. And it's just such a positive, beautiful movie. So that I remember thinking, okay, we got this.
Yeah.
We can move forward with this career and try to,
Hmm.
make something of it. Because if you get to be in a film like something like that, that would be.
Hmm. It's a stunning, stunning film, and this is another one. I hadn't seen this one, but I actually when you sent the email with your list of films, I chose this before I'd seen the film, before I'd seen any of John Sayles' films, because I was familiar with him as a filmmaker, and the thing that stood out to me is I know that he's so expert. He's such an expert at working outside of the Hollywood system and making films that are just as powerful, and making indie films that really say something and have something on their mind. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I feel like there's a lot of John Sayles in your film, The River You Step In.
Thank you. And John, the director and really the main writer of the film, would be so flattered to hear that.
Hmm.
And I think we would agree because it takes time. It lingers on characters. It's of a place. It's of a certain Toronto, and it's kind of our neighborhood. So
Yeah.
oh, that is.
No,
Thank you for that. That's
it's
lovely.
absolutely, and that's what stood out to me is that I think that when you put that on your list, what I was thinking it signified wasn't so much a fear of losing your voice of that, but more of looking, how what can I do? How can I break into film? How can I kind of expand what I do? Because I see Passionfish and I see John Sayles as kind of your transformation into an indie film writer, producer, and actor. Because you guys were working outside the system, and you
Oh
made a
my
really
gosh,
beautiful
yeah.
film.
Oh,
That's
thanks.
it's
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I'm sitting in the set because I mean, we shot most of it in my house in Leslieville, and I'm in a converted closet now as a voice studio, which had all the costumes in it, and yeah, you kind of. One day, I remember I was making sandwiches for crew, somebody was asking where the Apple box was. I knew where that was. I was trying to learn my lines. Somebody hadn't shown up for continuity, so we were just
So you were
you just
wearing
kind of
many
like
hats at the time.
many, many,
Many
many hats to
hats.
the point where they're practically, you can't even see in front of your face because the hats are down below your eyes. But
Hmm.
you do what you can.
Before we get back to Passionfish, I'm just curious. So the film first premiered in 2019. When did you film it? Did you film it while you were doing
20
Come From
in
Away?
between. I'm trying to remember if it was 2017 or 2018. We filmed it in sort of in between doing the show in Washington State, in
Okay.
Seattle, and Washington D.C. We had quite a few months off in between those two cities, and that's when we said, if we're going to do it, let's do it.
Okay, because I was curious as to how that could fit into your schedule. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, how is Astrid doing this? But I mean,
Yeah,
I
no, it
wouldn't doubt
was.
it because like I feel like you'd get it done. Um,
Yeah, I still look back on it and I don't know how we did it. And that's one thing I would say to any filmmakers who are listening and probably are, because I mean, if you love films, who doesn't want to listen to something about somebody who loves movies and stuff? But you'll never have all your ducks in a row. You'll never have all the funding. You kind of have to just take a leap of faith and do it, and just do it, because otherwise it won't get done. Because if any fear or hesitation, you'll be lost. You just have to kind of, you know, believe the next step will be there when it gets to it.
the mantra, well, what I've always heard with film is making a film is like being a one person army in which every single person in the world is against you, and it's not like they want you to fail, it's just they don't care if you succeed, right? You're
Yeah.
going to war and you're the only one fighting for it. It's
Yeah, nobody will
it's
ever care
tough.
as much as you do
Yeah.
about the story. And hopefully once it's done, I mean, we've had a lovely response to the film, but it's still, it's hard to get in. I mean, it was so lovely to be in the Forest City Film Festival, even though it was online. It was just nice to know kind of being part of a community and
Mhm.
also my hometown, all of that felt so good. But even just trying to get an indie film into any festival anywhere,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard because indie films also, there's a lot of so-called indie films that have like Ryan Reynolds in them or
Yeah. Well, the current
Ethan Hawke.
Sundance class of indies, and I mean, even to go back to Passionfish, Passionfish is guilty of this for sure. Is that there's a class of indie movies that are like indies, but they're still made with like Mary McDonnell was an Oscar nominee the year before this came out.
For Dances with
Yeah,
Wolves,
for
yeah.
Dances with Wolves, and then she got another Oscar nomination. Alfred Woodard was, I don't know if she was as established as she is now, but like
She did a lot of television as well, but yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's
So
still, but John Sayles' roots really are in like indie movie, like capital I
we
indies.
we almost need like a new category. We need a new word instead of independent film. We need, I don't know,
Yeah.
what would you call like
I don't know. I always call them Sundance indies because there's indies and then there's like Sundance indies, which are the movies that's
that's
like, you've got half the cast of Saturday Night Live in your indie
yeah,
film, and like
yeah.
they're not Ryan
And the budget
Reynolds,
is
but
bigger than it. Yeah,
yeah.
the budget is bigger than one would expect for an indie.
Hmm.
Yeah, Sundance Indies. I'm gonna use
Yeah.
that. I will give you credit though.
Of course, but it's there. That's the type of, because Sundance started as a place to show films that are like The River You Step In, like indie films, and it's become like all the films there like starring big name actors and
Yeah, I think that festivals should take a look at that
mhm.
and see what their mandate really is. If something's going to be released, anyways, does it really need to be at an indie film
Yeah.
festival? I don't know.
If you have
Um,
$15 million in your budget, like do you really
yeah,
need to be at Sundance? And I mean, it's great to have platforms for those films, but
yeah,
Sundance should definitely rebrand itself, I think.
yeah.
Um,
Sundance.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, Passionfish is such a lovely, lovely film, and like you said, it's so
Yeah,
evocative of a time, of a place, and to go back to Ali Stoker, like I think that this movie has so much on it. It's so forward thinking in that way that the film presents this problem, which historically has been a problem, that actors who lose their ability to walk can't act anymore, and that's a problem. And this film
yeah,
looks at that and says, why is that a thing? She can still act.
yeah,
Why is that a thing? And it is so interesting that I think the industry is still has a long, long way to go. But a film like Passionfish is looking at that, saying this is a problem and it needs to change, and
yeah.
it's saying something about it, right?
Yeah, and to be fair to John Sayles, I don't even know if that was like his agenda. I think that's part of it. I think he was just drawn to this idea of somebody having a breaking point and
Hmm.
then rebuilding. And what does that look like? You know, I mean, the inspiring story of like, the you know, it's not a movie where it's like, oh, she's going to learn to walk again, or there's going to be this special operation where she's
Hmm.
fixed. I mean, she doesn't need
Yeah.
fixing.
Well,
She needs to realize
and
she
that's the thing.
has, her humanity is still intact. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about Passionfish is it's there's so many films like it in which in the end it would be like, oh, she's fixed. She's fixed. But
She can walk. Yeah.
truly
So that's, yeah.
the point of a story like this is that there's no fixing that's needed.
Yeah.
It's just,
And the friendship between Alfred Woodard and Mary's character, again, it's about, when we're talking about fame
yeah,
and feeling like you find the community you belong
you
in,
find
you
your tribe.
create chosen family, which is also, the river you step in is it's about what your chosen family is, how you extend yourself beyond the biological family or whatever. You create your connections, because we're all interconnected. I always
Hmm.
like to say, movies that are about the interconnectedness of all of us. Those are the movies that really resonate with me
Mm-hmm.
now. It's like I'm, always interested in how are we different, but how are we the same?
Yeah.
How do we connect? And we need to connect. I mean, it's so hard right now during a pandemic.
I know. I know.
I mean, this is so lovely to have this conversation with you. It's so
It's
stimulating.
yeah.
But I wish we were in the same room. It would be so
It would be
great.
so nice to, but I'm still glad that we have the ability to be able to connect still,
Oh,
even though
we're so
we
lucky.
are very lucky.
Technology. Oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
we're very lucky. Can you imagine the pandemic of 1918?
Oh,
You send off a carrier pigeon to
yeah. Like do a
find
podcast
out how your
via
friends are
carrier
doing.
pigeon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be like pigeon cast.
Yeah, pigeon cast. The pigeon would zoom from one place to another, Um,
Exactly.
I had a thought because talking about Passionfish, uh, I just realized a film that this reminds me of. Have you seen Sound of Metal yet?
No,
Okay, I'm gonna
no,
recommend. Have you heard anything about the film?
no.
Okay, perfect.
I will.
I'll
I
sell you
will.
on Sound of Metal because Sound of Metal
Okay.
just came out. It's an Amazon film, although it's not on Amazon in Canada. Weirdly enough, you can rent it through
Okay.
TIFF right now.
Okay.
But it's the story of a heavy metal drummer, and he loses his sense of hearing. He one day wakes up and he can't hear, and his entire life is drumming, and he's a recovering addict as well. And
Wow.
he has been using drumming to stay clean. Um, and so the story is about him um, going to this community of deaf people, and he as he goes to this place, he wants nothing more than to fix his hearing. He wants to fix it, and he doesn't want to learn sign language. He just wants it to be better. He doesn't want to be here, and so he's at this community, and it's almost like a rehab center. It's almost like a home for recovering addicts.
Right.
And really, what they're doing is they're trying to teach him sign language. They're trying to adjust him to life, and they're trying to teach him that he doesn't need to fix anything. He,
Right.
he is fine as he is.
Right.
But it's a really good,
Cool.
incredible performance from Riz Ahmed, who plays the main character who has gone deaf and is a drummer. But it talks about hearing through the lens of addiction, and you gradually learn that his addiction is not to drugs but to normalcy, and he just wants to go back to what was normal,
Mm.
and it's very much like Passionfish. So I highly recommend
And
watching
very
it.
much like what we're in right now, because really we're all kind of in a kind of rehab and we're about to go back to,
Yeah,
what is the new normal? Because
exactly.
going back to normal wasn't working. I mean, that's created the situation we're in as far as like pandemics and the environment and, social injustice and,
Yeah.
racial inequality. Do we want to go back to that? If we consider that normal, like it's that's interesting to
Hmm.
in that perspective too, of like, what's normalcy? Why do we crave this idea of being normal? I want to be the freaky kid who dances on a car in the middle
Yeah.
of New York,
Hmm. No, that is such a good point, and that's what I see in Passionfish, and that's what I see in uh, the pandemic. Right? We are craving to go back to normal, but what is normal, and why are we craving normal? Um,
Right.
and maybe that's
Yeah.
a good point for desperation as well, right? You know, what is normal, and why like change is exciting, and we should let change be exciting.
Yeah. Life is an adventure, even the crappy stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, we got to embrace it all, which is not always easy, but for sure.
So, for our final film that we're going to be talking about, the category that I gave Astrid was appreciation. If you can see a theme here, a pattern, where all of these are Asian things: inspiration, exploration, motivation, desperation, and finally appreciation. So, appreciation is a point in your career. Well, now you've broken, you've made it. You're there. You're on Broadway. You're the
It's
person
funny
that
you're
you
you're
dreamed
there, but you
of.
never feel like you've made it. You always feel like people are gonna the imposter syndrome. People are gonna find out that you're
Yeah.
just a kid from London who doesn't know what she's doing, but just
But I mean,
you know.
for the purpose of this, we're gonna say
Sure.
we can put aside doubts. You're on Broadway. You've made it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, you have made a fantastic indie film as well. Uh, I definitely see a future for you in producing, writing, acting, if you so choose, in film. But so at this point in your career, I want to hear about a film that you are really appreciating, and a film that has come to you recently and really struck you. And so the film that you gave me there was Cold War, which is fantastic. And I'm so grateful that I got to go back and watch this again because Cold War is spectacular. It's a 2018 film directed by Paweł Pawlikowski from Poland. And Astrid, do you want to talk about what the film's about? And you can talk about why you love it and why you appreciate it.
It's about a love affair. I think it's loosely based on his
I
parents.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and
At the end, it
so
says for
and
my parents. So
yeah, and I don't know if and I don't want to give away the ending, so I'll only go up sort of to a certain
yeah.
point. But to say it's about love. It's a love affair. It's also a love affair with a country, an idea of Poland, of a certain time, and there's a lot of repression in the film, and love and expression, and so we follow these people who fall in love. He's a musicologist. He's a musician.
An
Studying
orchestra
folk
director
music,
and
orchestra director. I didn't rewrite it, so I might get. I'm hoping don't get. I don't even remember the characters' names. Is it Zula?
it's Zuza and Victor.
Zuza and Victor.
Yeah, because
So
her
Zuza
name's
and Victor,
Susanna.
Susanna, right?
Yeah,
Zuza.
Susanna.
They fall in love, and so we see them through this. It's so lush. It's in black and white. It's so beautiful, but even in the beauty, there's so much heartbreak, and you feel this really like during the winter, like you feel this.
Hmm.
I,
It's
I'm getting. This is the first film that's getting me tongue tied because I don't know where to begin or how to get inside of it to
well,
speak to
because
people about it.
the title really does define what the film is. It's called
Yeah,
Cold
they
War.
love and hate each other
Yeah,
almost equally.
and it's not just that it's set in Cold War era Poland, and it's not just about the separation between the East and the West, which it is, but it's just it's a very cold film. It's a very harsh and like you said, it's full of heartbreak. But really,
Yeah,
it's about these two characters and their search for their authentic selves, and their
yeah,
she is a singer and she wants nothing more than to be an artist and to be a singer and to be something, and he is the musicologist and orchestra director and musician. He's a fantastic piano player, um, and it's really just this interweaving story of 25 years. um,
that's right. And it's
yeah,
incredible because you really do watch them both age. Like both actors are incredible. Like, doesn't she just seem like the youngest gal and then just so destroyed by the end? I mean, it
there's
really is. I mean,
they're both
it's
such
beautiful.
broken people, and
Hmm.
it's such an interesting film to me because there's so much meaning layered in through it, and it's a 90-minute film. So if you're looking for something, anyone who's watching this,
Doesn't
if
it
you're
feel like it's a 3 hour
it
film?
does,
And
because
if
well,
when you
so much
because
happens.
so much happens, and yeah, even when you say now a 90-minute film, I'm like, yeah, really? Yeah, it is. It's
It's
short, but
short.
it feels like you've witnessed whole lives.
Hmm.
You've seen this whole love affair,
Yeah.
and it's so crafted so beautifully because it picks moments and it uses this song.
Oh yeah.
He's looking for
Oi, oi,
Polish
oi,
folk
oi.
songs.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that oh, I just get chills
So good.
thinking about it. And we so in a sense, we see the song change along with them.
Yeah.
Like we don't suddenly it's not like a musical where you get different songs that tell you how characters feel. You have the one song, once he finds the song, and it's not even her who sings it the first time,
Hmm.
right? There's a young girl in a farmhouse with no instrumentation who sings this song. And then it's given to her and she makes it hers, and then it becomes this whole song for Poland, and then it in
Yeah.
France it becomes a jazz number, and it constantly
Oh
the
yeah.
song and where the song is at tells us where our characters are at, and maybe that shorthand is what is able for him to tell us so much story in 90 minutes,
And that's
because
so
you
fascinating.
keep coming back to it.
Like you said, with that song that you keep coming back to, it's amazing how not only does this tell the story of these two lovers, but it also, in 90 minutes, through a romantic musical drama, um, basically traces the entire rise and fall of the USSR, basically. And I've actually been learning a lot about the cultural Cold War at this point, and so I was kind of what sparked interest in this watch because I'd previously seen it at TIFF years ago. Um, so I hadn't seen it since then. And on this watch, I was like, oh, I didn't get that last time. But really, the film isn't just a romance, it's also talking about the way that music was used as a weapon in the Cold War. That in Poland, in the Soviet
As
states,
propaganda.
yeah,
Yeah.
they used folk music as a way to say, art is not for art's sake. Art is to represent people. Art is for this purpose. And we're going to do folk songs because folk songs are a property of the people. And then, in the West, there's art for art's sake. And so this folk song becomes appropriated and becomes um, a jazz number, which is almost like showing the fall of that Soviet state and of Poland's ideals.
And the disorientation of the young artist who actually felt very connected to it
Mhm.
in her own language, and then suddenly it's not even in her language. She doesn't even quite know what she's singing, and though it's beautiful, for her it starts to become
Mhm.
something not positive, I would say.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you brought this up as well, and that this is a film that you chose because I have been dying to talk about Cold War with someone who knows musical theater forever because I see this as like the ultimate anti-musical. Like you said, it's one song that comes back over and over
Yo,
instead
yo,
of
yo.
instead of it being multiple different songs. It's one song that repeats, but also it kind of takes all of the conventions and the setups of conventional movie musicals and flips on their head. Like the story, you could parallel this story with La La Land.
Which I
Absolutely.
haven't
You
seen.
haven't seen La La Land? Oh,
No,
Astrid,
no, I
watch
don't
La
know
La
why.
Land. Oh, it's so
Okay, I will.
good.
Okay.
It's so good. But it's literally the opposite of this movie because that's a story of two people in Hollywood who are like trying to chase their dreams and trying to find what authenticity means and trying to be themselves and make it like fame and like fame. But Cold War takes that same type of romance, that same tortured romance, and just makes it so dark. It's so dark.
So dark, but so beautiful in its darkness. I mean, the song itself, it keeps changing, but it slowly gets slower and sadder and more painful, like drinking glass or something. It's just, yeah. And yet it's such a beautiful film. It's so heartbreaking, and yet you can't help but admire it just aesthetically, that it just looks so damn good. Like that other film, Ida, which I also we touch on that briefly, but that's why I watched the Cold War. I watched it because John said we're going to go see this movie, and he's the real cinephile in the creative team.
The group,
Yeah,
the
in the group.
tribe, right? Find
Yeah,
your
the
tribe.
tribe, and mini tribe, which includes him, my cat, and me. Um, but we watched Ida, which I just thought was just, and who's the cinematographer? Do you know who the
Lucas
cinematographer
Sal.
is?
I don't
And
know
he's
if
in
that's how
both, right?
yeah, he does both. He also just did
Yeah.
a Netflix movie this year called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Um, he's
Oh,
a
that was.
fantastic.
Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did. It's
That
crazy.
was devastating. I hated it and loved it in equal measure. I was like, oh, what is this about? And yet I can't stop watching.
Hmm.
I know some people just hated
Oh
that
yeah, a
film.
lot of people hated it, but it's the
Yeah.
same cinematographer that did Ida and Cold War.
Yeah. And Edith, he does this incredible thing where he gives so much sky. Like the way he
Yeah.
frames people, it's almost always like the cameras tilt. It's almost like somebody's gone away for a coffee break and made a mistake, but it's not a
Yeah.
mistake. And you realize very quickly how beautiful, and Cold
Hmm.
War too, and the crispness of the black and white. Why do we love black and white films so much? I mean, what do you think? I mean,
Well,
you're into film so much.
I
What is it
think
about?
what black
Is
and
it a
white does.
centralized story for us because we're not distracted by color? What is it?
So, what I like about black and white is it's the ultimate distillation of cinema, right? And we think of it as you know, realist movies use it. It's something that um, is dissociated from fantasy, but I actually think the opposite. I think that black and white is fantasy because we don't see that way, right? Black and white is it's immediately saying this is fake. This isn't real. You're not seeing the way that you would in normal life. You are seeing through a camera, you're seeing through a screen, and what you're seeing is manufactured. It like really points out the artifice of what you're watching, so that's why I find it so captivating. I could not tell you why it's used. I think because people who are more serious are the ones that tend to gravitate towards it. But it typically does get used for more serious films, although it really is the ultimate way to basically say you're watching a movie. None of this is real. Um,
Yeah.
and
It's interesting
yeah,
though, because even when you say that, I completely agree. But there's something about it that essentializes the story.
yeah,
It does remind us constantly that we're in a story, and yet that very reminder focuses us in a way that makes it even more real.
yeah.
That
I
sounds a bit faffy
no,
what I just said, but I really think
I
that that's
completely
true.
agree. It totally
Yeah.
it strips away all pretense of this being anything but a story,
Yeah.
and you can just focus in and zone in and just sit in the story. It's beautiful.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
But you're right. The cinematography and just the way that Cold War looks is just so stunning.
Yeah. Anybody who hasn't seen it, see it.
See
It's
it,
so
see
good.
it,
Yeah.
and Ida
Beautiful
as
film.
well. Ida is
And Ida,
definitely
absolutely.
fantastic as well. But those are
And heartbreaking too. That
oh yeah.
also both those stories just, and there's something about watching movies that are not uh, sitting within like the dominant culture. Like it's just, that is so, I don't know. We all need to be reminded that
hmm
we're people. We all want the same things. We want love. We want compassion. Our humanity is a shared thing across the globe. So I love watching movies from other places
hmm
because you may think, oh, that's a strange thing they do in their culture, or that's odd, or that's an interesting dress, or like that's, but ultimately, like the black and white feature of some films, it just focuses us into the story right away. Like something about reading subtitles and being like, you're reminded constantly, again, you're in a story,
hmm
but it essentializes it and you can't do anything but focus on the themes, the people, what's happening, and how it makes you feel. So yeah, I love it.
Well,
I love films.
when Broadway opens back up and you're back in New York, and movie theaters open back up as well, you're in the best place in the world to be watching foreign movies because international cinema and world cinema, there's literally no better place than New York to be for that because everything
It's
plays New
true.
York. Um,
Yeah.
every time I've gone to New York, I just pull up IMDb and look at showtimes and go, "Oh, that's playing here. That's cool." I
Yeah.
oh, I've never heard of that. Maybe I'll go check. It's amazing. Like it's just
Just thinking of another movie that's also kind of set in a wartime. Beanpole. Have you seen
I have
Beanpole?
seen Beanpole. Yeah,
Wow,
Beanpole is very
that's
interesting, and that's one
powerful
that
as
uses
well.
color. I mean, because we're talking about black and white, Beanpole
Almost
uses color
saturated.
in a very interesting way to also
Yeah,
make it
yeah,
like, yeah, what you're watching is not real. What you're watching is a story, and you can just immerse yourself in the story.
yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Um, So that's the five films that we've been talking about.
The five plus. We should call
Five
it the five
five
plus
plus
because
because
we.
we went over a bunch of stuff, but I'm really glad that we did as well because we have our main
Me too.
films, and you've given me some things to watch. I've given you a couple of things to watch,
Yes, please.
and that's what I wanted out of this. I'm so excited to hear new things and to be able to explore new films and see some things that I haven't seen before. So thank you for that. That's been
And
really
thanks for
fun.
inviting me to do this. It's been a great conversation. I've really
hmm
enjoyed it.
Now, just to go over everything so that everyone remembers, the films that we talked
Yep.
about were Mary Poppins, which is beautiful, Fame, which is so much fun, The Devil and Miss Jones, not The Devil in Miss Jones, The Devil and Miss Jones,
Yes.
beautiful Hollywood screwball comedy, then Passionfish, and Cold War. I really hope people go and check these films out because you've
That's
given
a
a
great eclectic
It's
list.
a, I
It's
know.
really kind of, I'm quite chuffed with
You
myself. I'm like,
should be
that's a good
proud. You
little
should be
list. And
proud.
I tried not to overthink it. I just was like, when I look at that word and I think about my life, what movie pops up?
That's exactly what I wanted. So I'm glad to hear that. Now we are wrapping up, but before you go, I there's a question that I want to ask, and it's a twist
Oh,
on a familiar question. Okay, now this one it's gonna be a little bit tough, and you're gonna immediately think, okay, why this question? So if there's one person alive or dead, or fictional or real, just one being that may or may not exist, that you could build IKEA furniture with, who would it be? Now, the reason it's IKEA furniture, this is typically the dinner question. You know, who would you want to sit down and have a
right.
dinner with? This is not that, because who you might want to sit down for dinner with might be absolutely intolerable to build IKEA furniture with.
Hmm.
So there's criteria, right? Like I would love to sit down for dinner with Alfred Hitchcock because we talked about him. I'd love to sit down for
But
dinner with
you
him.
don't want him to build your
I
IKEA
it would
furniture.
well if I had to build side by side with him, I feel like he could do it on his own. I would not want to sit side by side, but you know who I would? Julie Andrews. Mary Poppins would be
Oh,
amazing to build IKEA furniture with because,
it's
I guess
true.
my criteria is I'd want someone who's supportive, who'd be interesting to talk with, but also wouldn't be frustrated. Uh,
Right.
so that's the question. Do you have
Huh.
anyone that
Well,
comes to mind?
I have to be honest. The first person that came to mind was actually a character, and I don't know why. Han Solo. For some reason,
Oh,
that's who came to mind. One, because once we built the IKEA furniture, um, yeah, handsome, and just fun problem solver. Although I have a feeling that he probably would just hammer certain things in and forget like who needs an Allen key? I've
yeah.
got my laser, whatever. I think it would be a very fun and ridiculous
That's the quote
evening,
of
and
the
then we would.
day. Who needs an Allen key? I've got a laser. It's the quote of the day.
There it is, exactly. So yeah, let's. You know what? I'm just going to go with my first answer. Han
That's a
Solo.
great answer. That's a great answer. I think that it would never be dull. You know,
No, because you know Chewbacca would be there too, and just
yeah, for
with those
support, moral
paws,
support.
just getting yeah, because he
Chewbacca might
wouldn't.
break
Yeah,
stuff though. That would be
are you
frustrating.
kidding? We'd have to build it a few times.
Yeah, you'd
Yeah.
have because suddenly you'd look over and be like, "Oh, Chewbacca," and you'd be like, "Oh," and
Oh,
suddenly he's like snap something in half, and you have to call support to get them to send you a new piece,
yeah.
and
Or
oh,
C-3PO will have to come
yeah,
and
it's a whole
yeah,
event, really.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
So I do want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's
This
been
has been great.
such a blast. Now, what are you working on at the moment? Is there anything that you're working on?
Ah, well, we're still trying to get the review step into other festivals. We just did a pitch actually for Oksana Pitch Fest. We wanted to do the film as a series.
Oh wow,
So,
it would
a
really
series
work
or
well as a series.
built around Stevie. So we're kind of working on that. Also doing a sequel to my creative partner John and I uh, to sort of a rock and roll play, a play with music that we did ages ago called Baal, based loosely on Bertolt Brecht's Baal.
Mm.
And the same playwright, Rose Cullis, is writing a sequel. We have a second draft now, and I've been writing some songs for it. So that's been fun to put my mind on that. Because like everybody, I mean, the pandemic is a corona coaster.
Yeah.
Some days, yesterday was a day when I did a lot of lying in bed. It was a bit of a gray day and, didn't even read, just kind of looked at stuff online. I couldn't tell you what I read, what I wrote, what I did. And then some days I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to work on some of my songs. And so I think we all have to kind of have a lot of forgiveness for ourselves when we don't get a lot done. And then there are people who are working.
Hmm.
Who are like out there, driving the trucks and doing the things and being nurses and doctors. And I don't know where they find the energy. I
Yeah.
guess maybe there's purpose. Maybe there's something in having a purpose
And a
that I
schedule.
feel a little, yeah, and a schedule. And I feel a little at loose ends sometimes.
Hmm.
So, and like having this today, this has been great
Yeah, it's
to just
given
think
a
about
little bit of
movies I
structure to the
love. And
day.
absolutely, it's been great. And usually, I'm usually up by this time, but I'm usually not very coherent. I'm usually,
Same here. Same
drinking
here.
lots of coffee.
Yeah, that's I'm usually up and not moving.
And what are you up to? So you're working on this podcast, of course, and then are you working on any other things, or what's the scoop
I
for you?
am in Ryerson Film School, and that's sort
Fabulous.
of my thing. I should be doing my final thesis film this year, but I'm not because I didn't know how everything would be. But that's I'm just toiling away, writing and working on everything. But
That's cool.
how after the show, how can people connect with you? Are you on social media? Is there any way that people
I
can
am
keep
on
up?
social media. Facebook I keep for friends and family. I don't know why. Twitter I haven't been on in a long time, so I wouldn't bother with Twitter. And Instagram,
Instagram?
I guess. Astrid. What am I?
We will include that in the show notes. So
Yeah,
if you want to follow
Astrid. I
Astrid,
think it's Astrid VW 2020 or Astrid 2020. I can't remember. It's like,
it will be. We'll link it in the show notes.
yeah,
So
my godson made me get on it. Okay, good.
so I want to thank you one final time. This has
You're
been a
welcome. Thank
blast
you.
having you, and yeah,
Yay.
we'll catch up again. Hopefully, have you on again sometime.
I'd love it.
And cut. That's a wrap for take 2 of Take 5 Action. Thank you to our guest Astrid Van Wieren for joining us today. And if you want to see more of Astrid, you can check our show notes for her socials and website and any more information on her. Be sure to subscribe to Take 5 Action wherever you get your podcasts, or you can find us at our website, fcff.ca. Take 5 Action is produced in collaboration with the Forest City Film Festival. And major thank yous to our producer, Nandita Dutta, our media consultant, Keith Tomasek, our editors, Juliana Estrada and Jeffrey Bremner, and our partners at OI Art. And you, our listeners. Thank you for tuning in, and join in next week as we talk with horror movie maverick and producer Chris Giroux about blockbusters, horror films, and independent Canadian filmmaking. My name is Matthew Downs, and I'm the host and creator of this show, and I can't wait to see you at the movies.